All right. Good evening, everybody. Just let me know if you can hear me okay. All right. Thank you. Good to be with you all this evening. We will go ahead and join palms as we get started. And you can repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. And putting the palms down. All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Intro to Buddhism and Meditation. Thanks for being here. I always like to start with a question, just to give a few moments before we start meditation for people to join, and also just to get people communicating with each other a little bit. So somewhere on your chat box there, on your screen there, you'll see a chat box. And feel free to type something in. I think the question for tonight, for me, it's interesting because we're just a couple days away, and we tend to, for whatever reason, we're conditioned to put times on things. Anniversaries, a year, the number 25 or 50. We have these numbers that become important to us for some reason. And so on March 12th will have been 1 year since we closed. And as I've shared the last few times, I remember saying to Maggie, we were talking about whether we should close temple or not. And we said, well, let's close for 2 weeks and, let's see what happens. And here we are a year later. So I think we now know, unfortunately, what happened. But it brings to mind really the teaching of impermanence and understanding that as the Buddha taught, everything we have comes together for a period of time and then ceases to exist and is always changing forms. So the temple as we knew it came together for a period of time. And as we knew it, it now exists no longer how it was and now completely differently. And interestingly enough, there are people who, now that we've gone virtual with everything, who never were at the temple but have been able to join us. And so now everything is, for some people, a lot easier. And if and when the time comes that this period of, or this condition ends where we're back open again and we're holding classes at the temple and we'll go back to that, there will then be people who miss that they're just sitting at home and on their couch and wherever they are. So this idea of impermanence is that everything is constantly changing. And sometimes we have the ability to adapt and adjust and embrace these changes, and sometimes we struggle with them. So my question for us tonight around impermanence is, how are you at dealing with impermanence and dealing with change? It's a pretty vague question, a way to look at it without getting into any specifics. But for a simple question to start with, how well do you do with the teaching of impermanence? How well do you do with change? Uh, and of course, the obvious answer is, well, it depends on what it is. Um, but I think it's important to go a little bit deeper than just say, well, it depends on what it is, because if change is easy for us or impermanence is easy for us in some areas and not others, then the answer is, well, it's not easy for me at all. Often, again, we want to default to it just depends, right? How good are we at having compassion? Well, it depends. So that answer, I think, really, I challenge all of you to go a little deeper than just base it on the condition that arises, and to be honest and say, hey, if I struggle with impermanence with anything, then I really struggle with it. So I'll go ahead and type that question in. Feel free to share your response. As I said earlier, somewhere on the screen there's a chat box. How well do you deal with impermanence? Impermanence. How well do you deal with change? And so again, as I was saying earlier, for me, looking at impermanence, and here we are a couple days away from the temple being closed a year, the temple as we knew it at that time has completely changed. And like I said, we all, of course, look forward to and expect, hopefully at some point in time in the not too distant future, for us to gather again and have it return. But right now, everything as we knew it is completely different. And so for me as a practitioner, I've had to adjust, and we've had to adjust the way we look at the temple itself, which to me is just a reflection of my own personal life at, how well do I deal with change? How well do I deal with impermanence? Understanding, as the Buddha taught, that everything comes together for a period of time and then ceases to exist. All conditioned phenomena come together for a period of time and then cease to exist. So can we embrace each moment without judgment and just show up as is? For me, that's a big part of this practice, and what I've learned from Buddha's teachings is to go beyond expectations. That's really the line in the Heart Sutra. But to go beyond expectations to me means not having expectations, but embracing life as it is. So how easy is that for you? How difficult is that for you? So feel free to type in whatever you would like. And like I said, again, I'll repeat this because I think it's an important part when we begin to explore practice. It's very easy for us to just default to the response of, well, it depends on what happens, right? So if something happens, if somebody takes my shoe, not a big deal. If somebody takes my car, maybe a little more challenging. So it'd be easy for me to say, well, it depends on what they take or what I lose. But again, if we struggle with the difficult ones, then it's definitely a struggle for us. So, all right. So I'll look at some of these responses and just share them out loud for anyone who might not be able to see them. For those who don't know, that's actually why I repeat them. I know that a lot of you see them as well, but there's also people who are joining us that, for whatever reason, do not see the chat box. So I think as someone who studies philosophy and neuroscience, I often reflect on the notion of impermanence. I'm not sure how I deal with change overall, though. Carolyn, honestly, not well. I'm surprised that I find the aging process so tough. I guess I'm more vain than I knew. Well, good to wake up to that. It'll make it a lot easier because the Buddha said that we are guaranteed 4 things. We get birth, or with birth, we get birth, we get aging, we get sickness, and we get death. And that's it. And then lots of other stuff that happens in between, some good, some bad, and somewhere in the middle. But that's the reality. And, for those of us who, I used to always say birth, old age, sickness, and death, but we're not even guaranteed old age. So we're just guaranteed to age. And the the sooner I think we embrace all of that, that's just a part of life. It does make things easier, but waking up to that helps. So, Marisa, I'm much better than I used to be, but still struggle always. The difference is whether I catch my fearful and clinging thought cyclone before it destroys the town. Yeah, again, similar to what I just shared with Carolyn, is that recognizing, difficulty with aging, difficulty with, our thoughts potentially ruining everything. The awareness is key. Paul, many times for me, the anticipation of change is worse than the change itself. Not always, though. Yeah, that makes sense. The fear around it. Samir, change is very hard for me. Controlling everything is my default mode. When things start to change, I unconsciously panic. Yeah, a lot of change is wrapped up in fear. Denise, change overall is okay for me. With impermanence, I struggle with death. I've lost so many friends and relatives. Yeah, that's it's a tough one. Yeah, absolutely. That struggle is around death is real. It's a combo. I get bored when nothing changes, but I panic when things seem to change without my permission. Yeah, if everything would just change when and how we want it to, that would be phenomenal. Embracing permanence is funny because it's we resist often change that we don't like, but if it weren't for change, once you're in a bad mood, then you'd be stuck there for your entire life. Or once you have a bad thing happen to you, that would remain that way forever. So impermanence is often a very beautiful gift. It just depends on what it is. Janelle, I don't do well with change that brings disappointment. Yeah, that's exactly what I was just saying. Impermanence when it comes to people coming and going from my life. Definitely the impermanence around people, death, things like that is always challenging, going to be difficult. And ideally, or I don't know if that's the right word, ideally, but the practice is to recognize that because people come in and out of our life at different times and stay for different lengths of time, it's important to try to appreciate everything as it occurs. Anyways, I may say more on that later, but for now, I want to start the meditation practice. I appreciate y'all sharing. For those of you who didn't share, that's great as well. Just, I think, good things to ponder with regards to how well we embrace impermanence and change. So, all right, so the meditation practice, a few things I'll tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you, right? You won't float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is it working? Is it not working? Am I doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, outside, wherever you are. This is life. Life is filled with chaos, and the practice of meditation is learning to get quiet and still within all that chaos. So posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap. If you're on a chair or couch, whatever you're sitting on, just trying to sit up straight. I'll guide us as we begin. We'll settle into a little bit of silence. And most important with this practice, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open, mouth open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Knowing throughout the practice you'll hear sounds. These are not distractions, not disruptions, simply what's happening around us as we sit. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention and focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. And simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Lost in thought? Return to breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgment from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, just sitting, breathing. keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation, yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe, knowing with each breath there's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with, it's nothing to do with anything I said. It's not from how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. Simply from our own minds and our own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being no different than any one of us who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in, where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. We react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Now, as you go through your day, you're going to be challenged constantly. Lots of impermanence, lots of change, lots of things happening that you don't like and you don't agree with. And we practice meditation so you can bring this mindset into everything you do. Not escaping from things, not using meditation to try to fix things or make things better, but using meditation so you allow yourself some time to just settle, to just sit, to just breathe, and then look at everything in your life, everything that's happening, everything that's going on. Learning to be with life as it is in each moment. Impermanence falls away, change falls away because we're just present with life as it is. But because we build all these constructs around people and places and things and time, and us and them and this and that, and all these guidelines we set up in our head of how we think everything should operate, when it doesn't operate that way, we don't like it. That's it. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else. Learning to be with life as it is extremely difficult, especially when we don't like how life is. We work on carrying this level of clarity into our lives. Meditation is not the escape. We don't meditate to be good at meditation. It's not about how long you can sit perfectly still and quiet. It's how we respond to everything outside of meditation. That's the practice. So with that, I'll pause. I always prefer just to turn it over to you all for questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with, feel free. And if you are joining us for the first time, welcome. For most of you, there's a chat box somewhere there on your screen. Feel free to type in questions. Again, anything around meditation, Buddhist practice. And I'm happy to respond. One thing I'll share is I wait for some questions to come in. It was interesting because a lot of times uh, people ask me this question in various ways, but I lead the same meditation every time, and I've been doing the same one for 12 years, a couple times a week, anywhere from, I don't know, 4 to 6 times a week. And every time I lead it, I do it as if I've never led it before. And when I was talking about impermanence, that really popped up and became very clear to me again that really the practice of impermanence is part of what motivates and inspires me to bring myself to each meditation practice I lead as if I've never done it before. Because I know that this moment, this time, this experience with you all will never happen again. Sure, we sit, or at least I lead every Tuesday and Saturday, so I can say today is Tuesday, so if I'm alive on Saturday, then I'll lead it at Saturday at 11 a.m., but it'll still be different. Different people, different experiences between now and then, different things going on at that moment. So the impermanence allows you to really just appreciate each moment and show up like you've never been there before. And for me, that's important in, at least from leading this, that I lead it as if it's the first time ever, and that I'm just as present and aware of how the practice can impact and deeply alter people's lives. So, dependent origination, can you explain what that means? Sure. So I always say with the meditation, pratitya samuppada, dependent origination, the basis of the Buddha's awakening. There's a couple different ways to look at it, but for me, it's really about the law of cause and effect, and everything being contingent upon something else for its existence. So for me, dependent origination is to understand the endless series of causes and conditions that had to occur for this to take place, right? So Samir, for example, asking this question, I mean, think of all the things that happened to you in your life and all the things that happened to me in my life. And yet somehow here we are, 7:38 my time, 10:38 your time, out on the East Coast, and we're sitting here over this crazy little YouTube thing. So that's really quite miraculous, right? Now, I don't know who the inventor of YouTube is, but without that person, you and I would not be sitting here right now. This could not be happening. Sure, someone could say, well, maybe you could be on Zoom, and then it's the same response. Well, without the person who created Zoom, this would not be happening. I'm sitting here on a Dell laptop. Without the person who created Dell, this could not be happening. Without the person who donated the computer, this would not be happening. Without everything that happened in your life, Samir, up until the point that we met, happening, this could not be happening. Right? We never could have sat on the top of that hotel room prior to your bar exam doing meditation without you showing up at the Dharma Bum Temple the first time. So everything contingent upon something else for its existence is that there's an endless causal relationship, a chain, a connection of all things that are occurring that allow this moment to happen. And most of us don't see the world that way. Now, let's take, for example, a very practical thing. Let's say you're angry at someone, or you're in an argument with someone, or you don't like someone. Maybe it's someone you know, maybe it's someone you don't know, regardless, right? We usually just look at how that person is impacting us at that moment, without understanding all the causes and conditions that have occurred in that person's life that led them to say or do the thing to you that you don't like. Now, this doesn't excuse what they say or do. If someone comes up and punches you, Samir, you can't say, well, that's dependent origination, so that's fine. No, it's not about what they're doing to you is right or wrong. It's understanding that the reason they punched you has a lot to do with their entire life's experiences, their pain, their struggles, their traumas, their difficulties. And that put them in that very moment in front of you, and therefore that occurred. All we do is think this person hit me. We don't look at what led to that. I'm guessing most of you ate today. So when you had your food to eat, maybe you're eating now, I don't know, right? When you had your food to eat, did you stop and think about where the food came from, who created it, who made it possible for you to eat that? The resources, the money you had to buy the food, where the food came from, who packaged it, who delivered it, who grew it. All these things. The causal relationship of all phenomena, the law of cause and effect, everything is contingent upon something else for its existence. Therefore, all of us are contingent upon all of us for us to exist. And if that is the case, I believe that's where we begin understanding that our hearts must open with compassion. Our minds must open with wisdom. Otherwise, we just eat and we don't think about anyone else. And this is greed, the first root cause of our suffering. We take, we receive, we do things without stopping and recognizing all the things that had to happen for us to receive that. So there's some thoughts on that. Hopefully that's helpful. Mostly out of the conditioned reactions I have to all this stuff in my life and all that continue to create suffering for ourselves. So I'm guessing that's just a comment there. Yeah, and yes, I mean, our entire life is a series of the law of cause and effect. So it is our reaction to each moment. Other thoughts, questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with? Do you know much about entering the stream? Is there a physical sensation associated with it? Apologies if this does not apply to your particular school of Buddhism. So stream enterers, well, let me start by saying this, that, there's what the Buddha taught. And I'm not a personal big fan of like thinking that things belong to certain schools of Buddhism or other schools of Buddhism. There's definitely some things that, in my own personal practice, I would maybe focus on more or less than others. But entering the stream, or a stream enterer, I don't talk about this stuff a lot because for me, I don't find it a very practical daily life practice for most people who get very intellectual with the Buddhist teachings and try to enter the stream, so to speak, as if it's like this physical thing that we do. there's a consciousness that we all have, and this awareness of being a stream enterer, I don't think is something that you can intellectually conceptualize. And I don't think it's, to your question, is it a physical sensation? I don't see it as a physical sensation either, because all of those things really fall away. Yes, as a Zen practitioner, I would be inclined to say that, it's a metaphor anyways, but that there is no stream to enter. But Pali Canon will really break down, the different stages of consciousness. So there's my response to your question, without really answering it. So hopefully that's helpful. This is my first service. Can you explain the Four Noble Truths and such? Yeah, for sure, Donovan. And welcome. Thanks for joining us the first time. Let me just look at those. Okay. So the Four Noble Truths is, for those others who don't know, and I'll sum them up for you. It was the first teaching of the Buddha, where he sat in the Bodhi tree, and it's called the first turning of the Dharma wheel. And he shared what we call the Four Noble Truths. And the first thing he said is that life is filled with dukkha. Dukkha translates to suffering. I think it's a pretty poor translation, because suffering sounds so heavy and extreme. Discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction, something that's just not right. So if you go to a deli and you order a sandwich and you hate mayonnaise, and you get mayonnaise on your sandwich, you take the bite and there's mayonnaise in it, that's dukkha. Now, unless you're allergic to mayonnaise, it's not going to kill you. It's not the end of the world. But our entire life is filled with moments that are just like that. Our sandwich isn't made right. It's not the right temperature. We don't like the way our clothes look. We're not this enough. We're not that enough. This person said this. I don't like this commercial. Like, our entire life is filled with moments where we suffer. And there's extreme suffering, death, loss, things like that. So every day in your life, you will experience dukkha. Suffering, discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction, things that just don't seem right. And the second noble truth is the cause. The cause of suffering, often referred to as the three poisons, is greed, anger, and ignorance. We're greedy, we want more, we're never satisfied with what we have. I'm guessing most of you have enough clothes to last you the rest of your life, yet will still buy more clothes. You probably have enough shoes to last you the rest of your life, but you'll probably buy more shoes, right? So there's this constant craving for more. The second poison is anger. We're often angry at the way things are. We don't like how things are. We don't like ourselves. We don't like others. And the third one is ignorance, ignoring reality. In other words, we have our perception of reality, and then there's reality itself. And we roam around most of our days thinking that our perception of reality is correct. So we overcome these three poisons: greed, anger, ignorance. Greed by generosity, giving your time, giving your attention, giving your heart, giving a smile, giving whatever you can to help. We overcome anger with compassion, and we overcome ignorance with wisdom. So these are the three practices: generosity, compassion, wisdom. The third noble truth is that's the good news. It's the cessation of suffering, nirvana, enlightenment, freedom from suffering. And I like to think of this as, in a practical sense, kind of going through your day and being happy and okay with how things are. But it can be as simple or as complex as that. And the fourth noble truth is the path that leads to the end of suffering. So we have the first one is suffering. The second noble truth is the cause. The third is the ending of suffering, cessation of suffering, which is often referred to as nirvana or enlightenment. And the fourth one is the path, and that is the Eightfold Path. And these are the 8 steps that the Buddha taught to really help our practice. And these are having the correct views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. This is the practice. I'm a big fan of this kind of common idea or teaching. You'll hear a lot that all of the Buddhist teachings are summed up in the Four Noble Truths, and thus the Eightfold Path. All of that's on Google. First 2 pages, you'll be pretty much reading the same thing in different versions of what I just shared. But the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, that's for me the focus. And that's why, kind of going back to the stream enter, for me, it's practicing the fundamental teachings, the core teachings of kindness and compassion. I think that's it. That's the focus. Be kind and compassionate to self. Be kind and compassionate to others. That's it. Do that every day. So hopefully that's helpful, Donovan. And again, welcome. Let's see a couple more here, then we'll wrap up. Jana, does Buddhist practice embrace that everything happens for a reason? You ready for this? No. I hate to shatter the ideas that everything happens for a reason. Now, I'm like everything, I'm using my own interpretation and my own views on what I think the Buddhist teachings actually mean. But that question comes up a lot, and I hear that a lot. And let me start by saying this. From a kind of psychological standpoint, and from this idea of trying to stay positive and finding silver linings, I understand, and I can at times be a big fan of people saying everything happens for a reason, because very often people need to do that to stay positive and be okay with all the miserable stuff that's happening. And we can say, well, this led to this and that happened for a reason. Right. And again, I'm a big fan of staying positive and finding silver linings in things. But I like to shorten that phrase for me from a Buddhist lens, instead of saying everything happens for a reason, and just say everything happens. That's it. Everything happens. Things happen. And then we give it a reason. To me, that's that understanding of Buddhist teachings, is that everything just happens. And when things good happen, we're not looking for justifications for them. We're not often trying to justify or find a reason that the good thing happened. We just embrace the good thing that happened. But when things we call bad happen, we then try to rationalize, justify, and be okay with why it happened. And so we come up with some reason in our head to make a positive, again, these are words that we'll all understand, to make a positive situation out of a negative, and we will say everything happens for a reason. So again, I'm repeating myself, but I understand, and at times I'm very grateful that people can use that justification to stay positive. But again, from a Buddhist lens, things just happen, and then we give it meaning. Nobody's justifying why good things happen. But when bad things happen, we want to justify it and give it meaning. And we want to learn to be okay with it. So, hopefully that's helpful. Priscilla, how do we deal with impermanence and loss, losing someone we love and depend on someone we were attached to? All right, so I'll close on this, Sal. Thank you. That definitely helped. Good to see you again. Good to see you as well, my friend. Glad you're here. Um, all right, so let me close on this question on impermanence. Um, the interesting thing is the way you ask the question: how do we deal with impermanence and loss, losing someone we love and depend on someone we were attached to? So these questions are often very difficult. They're always difficult, but they're really difficult when I'm staring at a screen at myself and I'm seeing words typed. But what I'm saying to you, Priscilla, is my question to you is how do you deal with impermanence and loss, loving someone, losing someone you love and depend on, and someone you were attached to? And the answer to that, normally I would see written all over your face when you ask this question, but the answer to that is probably not that well. So my first master, she always said, don't look for answers with your questions the way you ask the question. So instead of asking, how do we deal? You know how you deal with it. You deal with it not well because you're human and you have a heart and you love. And so losing loved ones sucks. There's no Buddhist answer that makes losing loved ones easier or better. This is such a common theme and a common question that people want this kind of, I'm not saying you do, but often people want this kind of magic pill that says, I've lost loved ones. How can Buddhism help me with that? Buddhism doesn't help things, and it doesn't always make things easier. To me, Buddhism is opening up to the true nature of reality. And the true nature of reality is we lose people we love. That's just how life works. I don't view that as depressing. I don't view that as miserable. I don't view that as negative. I view that as truth. Truth is all of us will be gone at some point in time. And so the question of how do we deal with losing loved ones is to really embrace the fact that we were lucky and fortunate and blessed to even have these people in our life to begin with. And when we lose them, it's painful, and that's okay. It's okay to feel pain when you lose people you love. If you don't feel pain when you lose people you love, I would be worried about you. Right? I've done enough weddings and memorial services to see in so many strangers these completely opposite settings. And a memorial service, one of the things I always say is it's okay to not know what to say, and it's okay to not feel okay. So how do you deal with impermanence and losing loved ones? Not well. That's a real simple answer. I would suggest not trying to fix that, not trying to change that. I suggest instead of trying to come up with an answer of how you're supposed to be when you lose a loved one, there's no magic formula for that. I suggest just waking up to the experience of what that's like. If you feel devastated, then feel devastated. If you feel crushed, then feel crushed. If you feel sad, then feel sad. Experience those emotions. But understand those emotions will also change. And in time, you will feel better. In time, you will feel different. But I'm not a big fan of this idea that Buddhism is going to look at death and loss and tell you it's okay. But I will say, just to kind of, maybe sound, I don't know. When the Buddha died, And there's a lot of tankas are Tibetan paintings and depicting different teachings of the Buddha. You'll see an image of him at his laying down when he passed, and there's lots of the disciples around, and they're crying and they're weeping, and there's one who's just kind of smiling. And this disciple understood that this loss comes to all of us. There's Buddhist sutra around the Buddha asking a woman who lost her child to go retrieve a mustard seed from a house of someone who didn't know death and loss. We all will experience it. Whether it's a child losing a goldfish or a pet or us losing loved ones, we all experience it, and it's painful. That is life. To me, Buddhist practice is waking up to life as it is, in all its rawness, in all its misery, in all its joy, and being with the miraculous thing that it is. So I'll close on that. I think the last thing I'll say is I've often heard Buddhist teachers, or a few Buddhist teachers, talk about death and loss as if it's just something that happens and you're just supposed to embrace it and be okay with it. And I don't view it that way. It is something that happens, just like the question earlier. Everything happens. We all die. We all pass on. But it doesn't mean we're just supposed to say, oh, it happens to all of us, and that means we're going to be okay with it. We're not. So, yeah, I'm sorry, Priscilla. This question normally would be asked in person by someone who's in tears, and my response would lead to more tears. And I get it, and I feel it with you, and I'm sorry. It's very emotional, very raw, and very difficult. So I hope you're doing okay. Seeing emojis with teary eyes is just not the same, but I hope you're all right. So we'll go ahead and we'll join palms. We'll close with a transfer of merit. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained be transferred to those who need it most at this time. So a few quick announcements before we wrap up. Thanks all for being here tonight. Great questions as always. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up 14 years ago to bring Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks or nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Again, for those who are new for the first time, welcome. We have classes every night, every morning, weekend. The Dharma Bum Temple, as I mentioned earlier, we've been closed just about a year now, March 12th. But we transferred everything online virtually. Endless gratitude to all the people that make that happen. So all of our regular classes, our college group, our teenage group, huge communities, classes with recovery around Buddhist teachings, battling addiction. There's always something going on. A couple book studies. Pristine Mind is twice a month on Saturdays. And we'll be starting a new one on Monday nights, March 22nd. And it's a great book called Zen Seeds, Stories from a beautiful Zen Buddhist master. She's an incredible teacher. So both books at Buddha for You. Buddha for You also has been closed for a year, but we have the online store up and running. So if you need the books, go to Buddha for You. Other than that, everything as normal. We've had some great virtual volunteer program meetings. Those are every Sunday at 3:00. So some good stuff coming out of that that'll be announced soon. So thanks all for being here. Please be safe, stay home, wear a mask, and do whatever you can to make sure nobody else suffers. So thank you all.